The police cruisers rolled up on my construction site like I was some kind of cartel kingpin, lights spinning sirens echoing through what had been a perfectly peaceful morning. I set down my hammer and watched just a regular guy in work boots and a faded ball cap as three officers got out, hands on their holsters, ready for anything. And right behind them, marching like she'd just personally busted Al Capone, was Brenda Harrington, the infamous president of the Maplewood Estates HOA. She jabbed a manicured finger at me and practically shrieked, "That's him! That's the squatter who's building on protected HOA land." You'd think I was about to start an amusement park the way she was carrying on. The lead cop, Officer Davidson, big guy graying at the temples, looked like he'd rather be fishing than dealing with this circus, walked up real careful and asked for my ID and any permits. I kept it slow and easy, pulling out my wallet and this folder of papers I'd started carrying everywhere ever since Brenda made it her life's mission to run me off my own land. "Officer Davidson," I said, reading his badge. "I think there's a misunderstanding here. This is my property." Brenda barreled forward, her face turning red, telling the officer not to listen, that the whole lakefront belonged to Maplewood Estates and she had proof. But Officer Davidson didn't even flinch. He took my paperwork and started reading the deed, the old survey, the water rights that went back further than any of us had been alive. And with every page, his eyebrows climbed a little higher until finally, with just a hint of a smirk, he turned to Brenda and said, "Ma'am, according to these documents, this gentleman owns not just this plot, but the entire riverfront from mile marker 7 to mile marker 12, including all water access rights." The look on Brenda's face, I swear you could have bottled it and sold it as a warning label for power trips. But let me back up a sec. 3 months before this HOA police parade, I'd finally decided to build on the land my granddad left me. 20 acres of pure, untouched lakefront. Not some subdivision lot, but real wild country. Maplewood Estates. This newish gated community sat right next door, but my land was never ever part of their HOA. I'd spent years in the city, staring at screens, dreaming about this place. A cabin with a wraparound porch, solar panels, maybe a little boat dock. Nothing fancy, just peace. Well, peace lasted about 2 days. That's when I first met Brenda. I was out staking the foundation, sweating through my shirt, when this golf cart came roaring down the path, dust flying, and Brenda hopped out like she was storming the beach at Normandy. Didn't bother with hello, just barked, "What do you think you're doing?" I said, I was building a cabin, and asked if I could help her with something. She crossed her arms, gave me the once-over and said, "This is HOA property. You can't build here without board approval." I tried to keep it civil, told her this land belonged to me. She laughed. Actually laughed like I'd told her the moon was made of cheese. "All lakefront access is Maplewood Estates," she said, accusing me of running some scam, and promised to shut this down right now. That was just the opening act. Over the next 3 months, it was like living in a sitcom, only not the funny kind. Every morning, I'd find new cease and desist letters duct taped to my tools, warning signs from the HOA scattered around stuff I tossed into my burn barrel by the end of the week. Then came the trespassing. Brenda popping up on my trail cam, sneaking around with her phone out sometimes with a measuring tape playing Nancy Drew. Once I caught her standing inside my foundation with a clipboard. "Brenda," I called out, making her jump, "you're trespassing again." She hugged that clipboard like it was a riot shield and declared, "I'm documenting violations. The noise is disturbing our residents' peace and tranquility." I reminded her the nearest house was half a mile away and it was 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. "We'll see what our lawyers have to say." She sniffed, then peeled out in her golf cart. Spoiler alert, the lawyers never showed. But the circus didn't end, it just grew. She started bringing other board members like backup, thinking a bigger crowd would scare me off. They'd stand at what they thought was the property line, taking pictures, whispering. One day, she even brought her nephew, called him the environmental compliance officer, but honestly, he looked about 16 and wore a golf shirt with the HOA logo ironed on. The final straw was when I showed up one morning and found that she'd hammered in a row of Maplewood Estates private property signs along what she decided was the boundary. That's when I started carrying my paperwork everywhere and told her flat out those signs had to go. "Make me," she shot back, smirking. I've called the authorities. They'll be here any minute to remove you from our property. And that's how we ended up with half the county's police at my build site. Officer Davidson, bless his patience, handed Brenda her defeat on a silver platter. "Ma'am," he said, "according to these records, you've been trespassing on this man's land for 20 years. I laid out my granddad's old survey map right on the hood of the police cruiser, pointing out every last foot from the north boundary to the southern edge, the beach, the trails, the boat launch, all of it mine. All of it, never part of Maplewood Estates." Brenda just stood there, mouth opening and closing, completely at a loss. One of the younger officers whispered something about another one of those HOA types, and the others just nodded, trying to hide their grins. Brenda tried one last time, said the HOA maintained the beach, paid for the sand, even put in picnic tables. "On my property without my permission," I said, "calm as you please." That's vandalism, actually. Officer Davidson asked if I wanted to press trespassing charges. Brenda went sheet white, and for a second I almost felt bad, but I just said, "Not right now, officer. But I'll be putting up proper signs, and anyone crossing them will be prosecuted." Brenda shrieked, "You can't do this." "Our property values depend on lake access." I shrugged, told her she should have thought of that before trying to steal land. The police left, warning her about false reports, and Brenda was left on the side of the road, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline as her power evaporated. Word spread through Maplewood Estates faster than a grass fire in August. By sundown, my phone was blowing up, board members, residents, everyone wanting to clarify what they'd been using, or maybe just salvage their summer plans. Rumors flew by nightfall I supposedly owned half the county and was about to build a casino. Next morning, I found a crowd of residents by my site. No torches or pitchforks, but plenty of tense faces. Jack Sullivan, the vice president, came forward, all apologies and awkward handshakes. "We'd like to discuss the beach access," he said. I told him there wasn't much to discuss. I'd paid taxes on that land for decades, while everyone else just acted like it was community property. A woman in yoga pants chimed in that Brenda had always said the HOA owned everything to the waterline. Judging by the looks being thrown at Brenda, who stood way in the back, her support was evaporating. Jack cleared his throat, called for an emergency board meeting to clarify rights and responsibilities. He told Brenda to prepare a full report on how this mess happened. That night's meeting was apparently legendary. My nearest neighbor, Tom, called me afterwards, laughing so hard he could barely get the words out. "First time I've ever seen anyone scream at a board meeting besides Brenda," he said. Residents wanted to know how she could be so wrong about something so basic. Turns out Brenda never checked a single record, just assumed if the HOA paid for something, it was theirs. She blamed everyone past boards, the county, even me, for not correcting her sooner. The board wasn't buying it. They voted her out unanimous, except for Brenda herself, and Jack took over on the spot. But Brenda wasn't done with me. 3 days later, I started building a fence, just a regular split rail design to mark my property. I put up private property no trespassing signs like my lawyer suggested. That's when Brenda made her last spectacular mistake. My trail cam caught her at 2 a.m. trying to yank out my fence post with her Mercedes. She got the bumper wrapped up in the wire, ended up dragging about 50 feet of fencing into a ditch. This time, I pressed charges: destruction of property, trespassing, vandalism. The judge didn't even blink, especially after seeing the videos. He gave her $12,000 in fines, ordered restitution for my fence, 200 hours of community service, and a restraining order keeping her 500 feet from my land. Watching her face in court, it was like seeing someone realize they just lost their life savings at the penny slots. "But I was protecting our community," she stammered. The judge banged the gavel. "You were protecting your ego, Mrs. Harrington. Consider yourself lucky I'm not adding jail time." So now when I sit out on my deck and look over that quiet water, I sometimes see the Maplewood folks hanging back behind the new fence, having to rethink their whole idea of what community means. Maybe that's justice, or maybe it's just another day in small-town America. But you know what? I'd love to hear what you think. Was I right to stand my ground, or did the HOA have a point? Drop your thoughts below, because in this country, community doesn't just mean sharing a lake. Sometimes it means drawing a line in the sand and daring the other guy to cross it.